The questions about Jerod Mayo internally actually started to begin or percolate in the summer, and that he does not think that Jerod Mayo is assured a second year in New England. Paul Perillo from Patriots.com, your thoughts?
What a lead-in.
Thank you.
What an absolute lead-in there. So I will just say, and I mentioned this on the email chain briefly this morning with you guys, I have not heard anything inside the building that would lead me to believe that Jerod Mayo is going to be a one and done. I think this was a pretty well thought out plan. So I would be surprised if it ends up unfolding that way. The only thing that I will say, on behalf, what Greg is talking about, I would say that I don't rule it out, because I think that they've proven over the years that they're not afraid to be unconventional. So I know a lot of people will say, well, Robert Kraft is not going to do that because he's not going to admit a mistake, or some other he owes it to Jerod Mayo. He understood that all of that is all true, but I'm just telling you, I wouldn't rule it out for those reasons. I would be very surprised if Jerod Mayo isn't back for another year. I think guys that get fired after one season, it's very rarely because of the record. However, a lot of the things that we're talking about the last week or 10 days or so are some of the things that guys that are fired after 1 year get in trouble about. So I expect it to sort of get back on the rails here off the field. But if it doesn't, maybe we're going to be revisiting what Greg said to you guys yesterday.
So what do you think some of those factors are, irrespective of the record?
I just think there's just a lot of talking.
Noise.
A lot of noise that I think that they themselves have created. I thought it was interesting. I'm sure you guys listened to Mayo today. Obviously the entire press conference was very, soft team centric. So that's something that he created. And I'm not necessarily killing him for saying what he said. He felt like his team can't stop the run. They can't run the ball. They can't cover kicks. And in his opinion, that's soft. So it's not necessarily something I would have done, but I don't kill him for saying it. I think he's trying to light a fire and say, hey, we got to play better than this. This is week after week of this. But now you spend an entire Wednesday talking about, well, what was your team's reaction? How did the players respond? And then Hunter Henry comes out and Dietrich Wise comes out, and they're asked, well, what do you think about your coach calling you soft? Again, all noise that you created. So that stuff I would expect to, find a way to keep that down. The wide receivers, it seems like every one of them is popping off every other day. So I think that number one thing for Jerod Mayo is he's got to get the house in order and get everybody moving in the right direction.
Paul, you didn't have a great opinion of this team and this roster coming out of camp.
Okay? I did.
No. Yeah, so let me just ask you, is this worse than you even expected?
Yeah, well, the off-field stuff. Everybody keeps saying, well, what do you expect? They didn't have any talent. You thought, because I did. I thought there was a chance if they didn't win the Seattle game that they would be winless coming back from London. Turns out they beat Cincinnati. Okay, so they're 1-6. I thought there was a chance they could be 0-7. I really did. But that doesn't excuse the way it's gone. I didn't expect them to give 200 yards rushing every week. I didn't expect them to get, 8-10 penalties every game. I didn't expect to see, the carrying on the field by the wide receivers, the pointing fingers from Devon Godchow to his teammates. Now it's Daniel Aquale, couple of really interesting Aquale and Bourne in the Herald this week. I didn't expect all of that. So this to me, I'm not going to be a know-it-all and say, oh yeah, I saw all this coming. No, I didn't think they had a lot of talent, but the lack of talent right now, the roster is the least of the problems of what's going on in my view.
So if you felt that way, and the collective we felt that way, is it unreasonable to think that people inside Foxborough feel that way?
Yeah, well, that's why I say I wouldn't necessarily just dismiss any possibility of it being a one and done because of this stuff. Now, I think Jerod, I think he, I don't pretend to know him exceptionally well. I have had an opportunity to sit and talk with him at length, and I feel like he has a plan. He has an idea of how he wants his team to operate. I think a lot of this stuff, is growing pains. It's rookie mistakes. I think if he probably had to do it over again, I think he would probably rethink the soft comment, right? He kind of, I wouldn't say he walked it back, but he clarified it the next day. There've been too many of those. But, does that mean 7 games in that's it? He's not going to learn. He's not going to grow. Mike, you and I were at the very beginning of the Bill Belichick era down in Foxborough. Some of the stories that I'm sure you heard, the same ones that I did from his time in Cleveland, could you believe that a guy who said absolutely nothing in front of us for 20-plus years in Foxborough was as, hated in Cleveland for the things that he would say after game? I think he learned. I think he learned from some of his mistakes. He used to criticize his team openly at times in Cleveland. He never did that with the Patriots. So it's 7 games. I'm willing to say you can learn from that, but we have to see some signs of it too.
It's okay, but it's also rare. A second time through coach, absolutely. The good ones learn from their mistakes, and there's a lot of examples of guys being much better on their second go-around. It takes that second go-around. It's hard to have those failings and stay with the team and then have a second swing on the same team. You know what I mean?
I'll give you another point to back you up. It's hard to do that because, especially, look at what their offseason consisted of. Maybe a dozen re-signings of players that are going to be here. So those are the guys that you're trying to get back on. It's like getting the toothpaste back in the tube. You've given these guys this freedom and latitude. Now you've learned maybe I gave a little too much too soon. Those guys aren't going anywhere. They re-signed them all, and they're going to be here.
The two things that would concern me on top of all others is outside of the record, if we're just going to ignore the record, which I don't think you should because they've had some really winnable games. But either way, the disconnect with the players. Okay, that was, of all the things that were promoted to me about Jerod Mayo, was his ability to connect and lead and mentor, and just the connection with the players, to me, was like one of the biggest selling points. He's of a certain age. He's a former player. Bill had lost touch with the modern athlete. That whole thing. So that feels like it doesn't exist. Again, game 6, he's calling them soft. And they're all sort of pointing fingers at each other. So the disconnect with the players would be really concerning to me. And 2, simply the run defense. It's just if there's one thing you think that he'd be able to get in and correct, it would be that. And if he can't even do that, then
the disconnect thing, I think you make a really good point. Because I do feel like from talking to Jerod during the summer, I thought communication, sort of that respect, I thought that was going to be a big plus in his column. I thought, that they had been beaten down a little bit, by the Belichick way and just being so hard all the time, being a tough place to play. I thought they would welcome that change, and I've been a little surprised by some of that stuff. The run defense is absolutely X's and O's on the field. Fair point. A lot of coaches have told me it doesn't take a ton of talent to stop the run. You can scheme it. If it becomes such a problem, you can scheme it up and just decide you're not running on us anymore. And we're talking from week 2 to now, they're averaging 165 yards allowed per game. And I know a couple of weeks ago, there was a lot of, you take out the big runs talk. And then last week, there were no big runs. It was all, 4, 5, 6, 8
13,
yards.
I think, was their longest game.
8. It felt like there were a lot of 8 to 10s in there. So it did. It felt like there were a ton.
Right. There were no big plays to skew the numbers. Houston got a few of those. But I think to look at the Houston game and say it was just about big runs was whistling past the graveyard. They're struggling right now. Gottschall seems to be talking about it every week, about guys not being disciplined, not operating in the scheme, kind of playing hero ball. He doesn't use that term, but that's the way I interpret what he's saying. I think there's too many guys trying to do too much. They definitely, can we just admit, even though it's an excuse, they definitely miss the guys that they're, Barmore, Bentley, Peppers, right down the middle of your defense. I know Bill Belichick conveniently left that out when he eviscerated, Mayo the other day. That's been a big part of it too, but that doesn't excuse what you're seeing.
If you like that clip, check out more videos from Felger and Mazz here. For more Patriots analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. And for all the latest from the Sports Hub, download the app at 985thesportshub.com.